Okay, Mike, we are good to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike King here. This is the Empower Hour, heard on ESPN Richmond at 106.1, 5 to 7 a.m. We are here with Tiffany Greene. It is the Empower Hour. She has assembled her squad. I'm honored and happy to be part of that crew. It's like the superheroes, and I even dressed up for Tiffany this morning. So I got Tiffany and Melanie on. I wear my red. It's red and black, but they thought it was red and green, and they thought it's like Christmassy. But what we're doing here is we're bringing presence of information this morning. Tiffany, welcome to the program, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm terribly excited. Just wanted to let everybody know, I know we had on the docket today, Dr. Christine Fusilier, but as everyone knows, I think we've said this a couple times, Mike, she started a new position with HCA. So we're kind of trying to let her kind of get acquainted with her new role. And so maybe she hopefully will be able to come next month. We'll see.
We'll see, but she is, she is worth the wait. She is a DEI expert, and when you change positions, a lot of times there's a lot of moving parts, but Dr. Fusilier will be back. She'll be with us shortly.
Absolutely. And before we get started with answering questions, I think now's the good time if you want to do a drum roll, Mike, even if it's just with, I don't know.
A virtual drum roll? Do I need to do a drum roll for something, ma'am?
That's right. We got to announce the winner of the membership drive for February.
That didn't happen yesterday?
No, we were going, you were going to do it a little early and I was not prepared. You're like, who is that? I'm like, I didn't have that ready.
Okay, so the Empower Hour had they had their membership drive and they're very successful. What we did was we have a winner, and what the winner is going to get is time to be on the mic with Mike. The program, it is the best business radio program around. Why? Because I hang with the coolest people. Tiffany Greene is one. That's Greene with an E, but the E is silent. She ain't silent though. No, she is not. She is not going quietly into the night.
That's not fun.
She is out there. She is the princess. She's the princess of purpose. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, and the winner is...
First of all, before I say the winner, I just, with the best, and you doing the drum roll, anybody out here think National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation about before he does the lights?
I am not, ma'am, I am not Clark Griswold. I mean, but
I'm sorry.
my decorating skills are like his, though. Yes, okay. I am Clark Griswold with that.
I had to say that. So the winner is Christina Miller with Miller Home Servicing.
Christina Miller, you are the winner in our book. So we're going to contact you and tell you what's going to happen. It is going to be a blast. We're going to have you in studio. We're going to talk about all amazing things. And I thank you for joining up with the Empower Hour. That's MPWR people, like the cool way of saying it. There you go. All righty.
That's right.
So Christina, thank you. Welcome. Congratulations.
So now we can open the floor to questions.
Yes.
And if there isn't
any,
right. Mike and I will bring them.
Yeah, we're gonna bring the heat. Okay, Tiffany, tell folks who you are and what you do. And we are not solo today. We got other people coming, but they're busy. So we're just gonna talk and we have somebody else who's with us as well.
That's right. So yeah, I'm Tiffany Greene. I'm the founder of Empower People, and Empower People is an organization that provides education, connection, and support to mission and purpose-driven leaders to drive positive impact and empower people. And this is just one of the many events that we do to help empower you to be the best leader that you can be. But we also offer a variety of courses. And one of the panelists here today, Brian Kinzie, is offering tomorrow's course, the very riveting, and I know we're saying that, but how to design, wait for it, an employee handbook. I know. But this is why it's so important, not just for compliance and so everybody knows what the policies are. Brian and I talk about this all the time. An employee handbook should reflect your organization's purpose and culture. Don't ignore it. It's not just words to papers. It could be a missed opportunity if you don't reflect that in an employee handbook.
One of the cool things is when we talk about the employee handbook is very necessary. So we got Brian Kinzie, Tinker HR is with us. Tiffany, who else do we have with us as we go around? Maybe do a few introductions.
So we'll introduce this the advisors, our superhero squad. So let's just go in order. I will allow them to kind of introduce themselves and what their area of expertise is. I see on my screen for the first one is Brian Kinzie. It's actually in alphabetical order. Kudos, guys. Jeez.
Shocking.
That was planned.
Just the way we wanted to set it up. So, all right. Yeah, my name is Brian Kinzie. My company is Tinker HR. We provide fractional HR support to small businesses and nonprofits. Can be anything from helping them write their first employee handbook to helping them with recruitment, retention, compliance, sticky employee situations, general HR strategy, all those things the HR departments do. With big companies, we do on a fractional basis with smaller organizations. So that's what we're all about. And tomorrow, 1 o'clock, we'll be having a riveting discussion about employee handbooks. So I encourage all of you to grab some, Diet Mountain Dews and settle in and be ready for it.
Popcorn. I'll add popcorn to that too. Let's bring
popcorn. Yeah. Wow. Yes.
So, Brian, really quickly, when we talk about the employee handbook, it is a transfer of knowledge. It's a lot of the things that the owner knows, the boss knows, or wants people to know, or how they want them to act and engage. That is the reason of the employee handbook. It's not that you get it and walk in the door, they hand it to you the first day, and you never see it again.
Yeah.
It is, as Tiffany said, it's a living document.
It should explain what the company expects from the employees and what the employees can expect from the company in return. And a lot of times, especially when companies are in growth mode, they frankly are making up their policies on the fly, and they might not remember what they said they wanted to do 6 months ago. So it's also a way of kind of documenting this is how we actually want to function as an organization. So it's good from that standpoint. It has, John can tell you, it has some nice legal things about it, why it's a good idea to have an employee handbook. And again, it's some place that everyone can go to, both on the ownership or management side of things or the employee side of things, to figure out how the company actually works. So, yeah.
So, Tiffany Greene.
Can I add to that just for a second?
Go for it.
Yes,
good opportunity to share your organization's purpose and its story. So everyone has an opportunity to actually read it. And it shouldn't just be one of those template letters you will often see from the owner. Nobody reads those. I think Brian would attest to that. It should actually be really about the purpose, and it should be a story. And a story should be a page turner. So just have to think that.
So, Tiffany Greene, did Brian Kinzie put out some salacious information that business owners may make up policy on the fly? Did he really say that? Boy, I can't believe that.
And it's recorded.
We a lot of times we do put out a fire and we don't remember how he did it, and that becomes policy. But we can't remember the last time when we put it out. So it is good to have it written down and recorded, because then that becomes a standard operating procedure. Hey, Tiffany, how do you like that?
I like it.
That's called an SOP in the Army.
Oh.
All righty, who else we got next?
John Rabil.
Oh, man, we got our favorite counselor, our legal eagle is here.
Good morning. I'm John Rabil, and my company is ELA, and we're a law firm, works with small and mid-sized businesses. Sort of like outside general counsel, we help them navigate through legal issues they may not be aware of, keep them out of trouble that they could avoid, and act as strategic advisors.
So, John, really, a lot of times people don't realize the concept of the general counsel. Explain that to people, that the idea, what exactly that means.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's, in essence, you think about how big businesses use lawyers. They use them as general counsel and advisors to help them identify risk and navigate issues so they don't become problems and lawsuits, and they can stay out of trouble. And so there's no reason small businesses shouldn't be able to access the exact same type of service. And a lot of trouble small businesses get into from a legal risk standpoint are things that could be avoided. Either they don't know about them, or quite simply, it's not part of their day-to-day operations, and they get caught up in that. And small businesses are not as equipped to handle lawsuits and legal fines as large businesses. So I think it's even more important that they know how to avoid some of that.
There you go, John. Really quickly, how can we go find information out about your company?
Sure, online, elapractice.com, or they can just email me, john@elapractice.com, and happy to chat with anyone about questions in terms of legal or risk management.
All right, John. He is the lawyer partner of the squad, Tiffany squad. All right, Tiffany, who is up next?
Stacie Briley Goodman.
Oh man, operations. After I talk to Stacie, I get more buttoned up. We are not leaving operations to, by chance. We're not shooting from the hip anymore. No, we're not.
No.
Stacie,
Well, I'm
good
glad
morning.
I have a good impact on you, Mike.
You know what? When I needed the link, who do I contact? The
That's right.
operations person too, because she will have it when the salesperson can't find it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Stacie Briley Goodman, Origamic Solutions. Really quickly.
Yeah, so I'm Stacie Goodman, founder and principal consultant at Origamic Solutions. We are a small business advisory and operations management consulting company. We are here to help navigate our clients to operational excellence through use of our impact methodology that takes a business and makes sure it has all of its foundational components for success and future growth by having its infrastructure, which could include an operations manual, processes, organizational structures, the necessary tools such as in your finance and CRMs, etc. And that allows you to collect data to have measurements and to assess your operational health and profitability and all those numbers that we like to talk about. And then when you decide if you might need a change, we help you put a plan into place and a roadmap for success of tasks to do to improve. We help you put that into action. And once you have put it into action, you can control it and then create continuous process improvement strategies so that you can then provide transparency to the rest of your company, to future investors, etc. So we use those. You'll see it. We have just relaunched, and so you'll start to see a lot of new things, just like John on Instagram and LinkedIn, about all the opportunities that small businesses can have to have affordable consulting with operations, just like they would with Brian at Tinker and John at ELA.
Oh, you're on mute, Mike. Mike's like, oh,
He's
shoot.
still taking
There
it
I am.
all
I'm
in.
back.
There you go.
Now, I was overwhelmed for a moment. All right, so you.
Oh no, he froze again. So Mike, while you're dealing with technical issues, I'll go ahead and offer the floor. The guests, you don't have to say who you are and what you do, but I'll give you the opportunity to do that. And then if you do have a question, I'll also give you an opportunity to ask your question. The first person I see as a guest is Melanie Roberts. And don't forget you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. You know I have issues with that mute button. My financial advisor, equitable advisor.
Melanie,
I am in a networking group with
you're cutting out.
Joy Greene. Yep.
You're cutting out. Am I the only one hearing that? It's like a cutting out. Yes,
I'm
okay.
cutting
No,
Try
she's
one more
cutting
time.
out.
Try one more time. Let's see if it makes a difference.
Try one more time. It says unable
Not
trying to
working.
multitask. No one's here. No. Okay. Hi.
Okay, but feel free to drop your information in the chat and your question. Sorry, this is what happens with technical issues, and we gotta give ourselves grace for that. And Amy Hughes.
Hey everybody, I am Amy Hughes with B&B Printing, and we put ink on paper. We can help you with direct mail, doing marketing material, or we can even help you with your logoed swag for your team meeting. I'm Amy Hughes, ink on paper.
I love the ink on paper. Good branding there, Amy. So let's start with some questions. Amy, do you have a question? If not, I will ask the panel a question. Okay, so for a lot of people, we feel like we're reliving 2020 because, as you can see, with politics, and of course we're not talking politics today, but it seems like things are looking really familiar, and people are really scared about what's going to come down the pike. Are we going to relive the same scenario over again? And instead of like talking about, I don't want to ask you a question about inflation and recession and what's your prediction and speculation about the economy, because the reality of the economics is we always go through the same cycle over and over again. What I'd like to ask the panel of experts is what can small business owners do and nonprofit leaders do to focus on what they can do and not what they can do, regardless of the things that they can't control. Give them some things that they can focus on versus the things they have no control over.
So I'll start with that one. The first thing you can do in an operation standpoint is evaluate your cost. So a lot of times when we go into these cycles, and Tiffany, you're right, it does cycle on a regular basis. And so when you come out of those type of situations, you want, hindsight is 2020. So you learn from those situations and then you evaluate your current status. A lot of times I will be called in to companies when things get tight because they're looking at how can I reduce my cost? Well, it's good to reduce your operating cost, even when things are going well, because it increases your profitability and your ability to invest in education or new ventures or new employees when things are going well. But when they're not, at minimum, the business needs to know how much does it cost me to run my business at a minimum, if without all the extra bells and whistles, if you took out any extra investments that you're in right now. So I would advise people to make sure they understand their numbers, not only just their sales and their overall expenses, but in the process we break down processes of how the employees' time, how many hours and how many employees does it take me to do this process, and break down that operating cost. There may be more inexpensive ways and the old school was, instead of taking a phone call, maybe you have an email exchange. That's what drove the industry is to go to more self-service type of mechanisms, is that times got tight, money got tight, and the ability to hire employees transitioned us over into more self-service elements. And that is why they were doing this, because they were looking at their processing cost. So that's something that you can control inside of your business.
I like that. And one of the things, and Brian, I'm sorry, you'll be able to add too, but one of the things when you were saying that, Stacie, as I was thinking about probably like 20 years ago now with banking, that's what banking did to try to control their costs. And they started charging their customers to see a teller. They were trying to get their bankers or their customers to go to the ATM, and they lost a lot of clients. And where they went was to a lot of the credit unions, because the credit unions did not do that because they focused on the customer. So when you, just to add to what you were saying, is it's great to cut costs, but if it doesn't fit within your culture and your purpose, be wary, because got to know where to cut. Some things are not worthy of cutting. Sorry.
Yeah, customer service is definitely not worth it, but in the ways that you do outbound communications, things that are not directly human impacted have opportunities. The other thing to look at is overproduction. Sometimes you're doing something because you've always done it that way, but it doesn't necessarily serve its purpose anymore, or there's a new way to do it that doesn't impact customer service. But it's just, don't be afraid to step out of the box and look at a new way of doing it, just because, well, that's the way we've always done it, right? So
100%.
Yeah, excuse me. From my point of view on the HR people side of things, there's two main factors. Number one, what is your business plan? And number two, what can you actually afford to do? I always advise companies that they should be trying to staff to what their business plan says they're trying to achieve. So if you have a business plan and you're reluctant to staff to that business plan because you're afraid your business plan won't work, you might want to revise your business plan. So have a realistic business plan in place, and then put the people in place accordingly that are going to be necessary to support that plan being successful. I think you have to work under the premise that your business plan is going to be a successful plan. But having said all that, you still have to make sure you have the money to pay the people at the end of the day. So, you can't just hire people and not have the money to pay them. So any type of hiring decisions you're made, staffing decisions you're making, need to be tied to financial reality. So if you're going to be planning growth, that's fantastic. Make sure you have enough actual income coming in that's reliable to be able to pay to support that growth for your people and your headcount. But I've seen a lot of businesses who are reluctant to hire because they're afraid of a possible economic downturn, and they'll sit there and they'll miss 2 or 3 years of growth because they were worried about when the next downturn is going to come. I don't think you can operate successfully from a place of fear as a business. Prudent, sure, but when things are going well and your business plan is working and things are going the way you think they should be going, hire the people to support that. The worst thing in the world is to actually find your customers, get them excited, ready to move forward with your organization, your product, and then not be able to deliver to them because you don't have the staffing necessary to support that. So you don't want to be stuck in that situation where you don't have the people in place to support customers and the mission of your organization. Final thing I'll say is economic downturns are a fantastic time to go hiring. If you've got the money during an economic downturn to go out and find talent, go find talent, because that's when, if unemployment's higher, you've got a lot of really talented people out there looking for jobs. Take advantage of that because people are out there looking. So if things are slow, they're not right now, but when there is an economic downturn, if your organization is in a position to be able to hire talent, go out there and do it. It's a great time to hire people. So I think that's all I have to say on that.
Good advice. I like that. John, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think on the legal end, it's somewhat just staying vigilant. In most aspects, has nothing to do with economic downturns, election year, what have you. We've been in a cycle of increased regulation, state and federal level. Nothing's likely to change that in the short term. And then I think staying on top of what your big risk factors are for your business, and it varies depending on your specific company and industry, but generally you're talking about things like contracts, worker issues with employees or independent contractors. Lawsuits against businesses are up significantly year over year for the past several years. That's not going to change in the short term or the next few years. In particular, labor disputes, issues with employees, issues between employees, and contract claims, all things that small businesses are most susceptible to. That, like I said, isn't going to change. Once it does start to change, you'll have to adjust to that as well. So there's always going to be something for you to stay on top of, regardless of what the external factors are that you can't control. You just need to be managing those things, be aware of them, and adjust accordingly. And nothing should be too disruptive to your company if you take more of a proactive approach with these types of things.
I have a question for you, John, because we've been getting some questions regarding this, so I'll let you clarify. I'm going to ask the big question, but I'm going to have like a part A to it, so to speak, a sub question to it. John's like, oh gosh, what is it? It's not bad. We've talked about this, but a lot of people have questions about it. So what is the Corporate Transparency Act? How is that going to affect everybody? And should they be hiring somebody to take care of that for them?
So
Special agencies, frankly, special agencies.
So the Corporate Transparency Act is a regulation that basically says FinCEN now requires you to file what they call a beneficial ownership interest report. So small businesses that meet certain criteria, and the majority of small businesses are, I think, falling under the criteria, have to report the beneficial owners to FinCEN. You do it online, typically. You list the name of the company who owns it, put some information in there, like your license or a passport. And that's essentially it. In terms of whether or not they should hire an agency, I'm not familiar with that. I don't know about. Sure.
There's folks out there, of course, not naming names, they're charging people $99 as a subscription to help them stay compliant with this.
Not like $99 a month.
I'm not sure. I've just been quoted $99.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to understand what your compliance regulations are with it. For most businesses, I don't think compliance is going to be an issue. It's just getting it filed. There's a $500 fee if you're not filing it in time. So for businesses before 2023 and prior, you have until December 31st to file. If you start your business in 2024 or after, you have 90 days at the moment. It's going to switch to 30 days to file. So some people will get caught up in the fines for not doing that. I'd be aware of that. The other thing to watch out for, I guess, or pay attention to is federal court just said it was unconstitutional. So far, that only applies to the plaintiffs that filed that lawsuit. That's certainly not going to be the end of it. So there's going to be some continuing legal battles about whether or not BOI is necessary going forward. I've advised people to just file it and get it over with, because why risk non-compliance and fines at the moment, and just don't want to be at the whims of the government as they change this thing.
And now I'm going to sound like a lawyer myself. And isn't it true that some legal firms will help remind you and stay compliant with this?
I've heard there's some that are doing stuff like that, but no, yeah. So I'm helping my clients stay compliant with it, making sure they're on top of it and getting filed what they need to have.
Cool. And I think I just discovered my side hustle of infomercials. So, so I would like to ask everybody, because I know we all look like we're in our 20s, but we actually have all had more than 20 years of experience. It's amazing. So out of all the clients and businesses you've ever worked for, when you were a small child, went through a recession, what are some of the great positive things that some of the owners or decision makers did that you witnessed that you were like, wow, that was just a really good decision? I know, thought-provoking.
I'll get this out of the way. So, well,
Good
I'll give the
attitude.
other two of you some time to think about your answers. I don't have a specific decision. I think watching some of the businesses that have been successful in those situations are the ones that have focused on what they can and can't control, a little bit of what we were just talking about, and sort of shut out the noise, and in many cases not been so reactionary. You know, the thing is, we got to cut marketing, we got to cut a lot of maybe not following the normal path of cutting all these costs, especially if you don't have to. I think Brian made a point earlier about if you have the resources to do it, just because you're in a recession doesn't mean you should do it. Maybe some real advantages for you out there to play that differently. But I think focusing on what you can control, doubling down on some of those things, looking for what's been successful and new opportunities, even though you're in a recession, has worked out well for some companies.
Ooh, Brian and Stacie both went off mute at the same time. That doesn't usually happen. But Stacie, because you usually take it first for the team, we're going Brian. Yeah.
Okay. You know, actually, I've seen businesses make really good and really bad decisions during these time periods. Let's talk about the really good decisions that were on opposite ends of the spectrum. One company I was working for when a serious economic downturn hit the entire economy, but very specifically their business, they reacted really, really quickly, and we did a lot of downsizing very, very fast. It was planned, it was strategic, but we took the company from over 300 employees down to, it was 80 when I was letting myself go as part of the plan. So that company survived the downturn. A lot of organizations in that industry did not survive at all. So but the fact that when we saw what was going on, we acted quickly on it, and we preserved the core financial stability of the business. So that was a good turn. Now, the opposite end of things, the next organization I was working with during this downturn had a long sales cycle for the product that it was making. So frankly, we weren't being impacted by the economic downturn because things were 2-3 years of cycle time for us. And a lot of our competitors, however, or other people with similar skills to what we had, were doing downsizing. And that we took advantage of that time to hire talent to the organization, because we had money, and we had the need for people, and the people were out there looking for work, frankly, at a reduced rate, because we were the only people in town hiring. So we did a lot of hiring during that time period, got some really talented people on board, and that has basically set the organization up from a staffing standpoint for the next 2 or 3 years. So, but it was two exact opposite reactions. One, cut heads as fast as we can in the right spots and preserve the company's financial stability. Second, add talent while you can get it inexpensively and it's readily available. So, but both were really good decisions by those organizations for how to react to the situation that was happening at the time. So, and completely different from a people perspective. Lots more fun, I should say, to be hiring people than laying yourself off, I will say also.
I get that. I get that. Stacie?
So the examples that I have are not necessarily, one is economic related, one is just, you know, society related, I guess. So, but it did have an economic impact. So in 2006 to 8, where the banks were kind of doing their weird thing, I was working as a consultant, and we had 2 clients, major clients, multi-million-dollar clients, go belly up the same week. And so our consulting firm had provided services to these clients and were owed a good amount of money. but where I was impressed was how the owners handled it. It was, again, what can you control? You can't, that's going to be a long process to get your money back. You do have to we had to pull our staff out of those accounts and try to figure out how to reallocate. So agility is an amazing skill to cultivate, where you can keep your focus on what can I control, where can I go, how can these skill sets that these people have be used, elsewhere. And we did have, at that time, the sales team was good, and so they had diversified. We had already been looking at that as a company. Where are all of our clients, in what industries, how much money do we have, locked into one client, because these were larger contracts, and we had made efforts to start diversifying our portfolio of our customers, so that if one industry went down, the whole company didn't go down. So that was one space where they were proactive enough to start looking at that earlier on, by the time we hit 2008 and the big financial hits. And we had a lot of clients in the financial industry. So we, you kind of took hits there. The other one, and now again, I was still I was in a mid-size, well, no, at that time I was in a larger firm. We were at 9/11 when I was working as a consultant in the hospitality industry, and specifically for Marriott at the time. And when the planes go through and people are afraid to fly and move, the hospitality industry kind of took a major hit. And so, again, agility was one of the things I saw where the company tried to identify where they can move resources to other industries, because we were versatile enough to do that. The clients, they went and understood, they didn't cause this, but they were going to have to react to it. So it wasn't to cut their staff and their operations, but it was to cut their investments. They stopped project. Brian was talking about that. If you have something in your strategic plan, but right now it's not a good time, you may have to put stops on certain work efforts until you can spend that back up. From a small business element, I've been lucky enough to, I come from a family and a community of small business owners. When the economic hits, we were in industries that people still needed gas in their cars. People still had to have a funeral when they passed away. So we were in those more protected industries. We did have a family that was in the floral business, and they did choose to sell their larger facility and move into smaller facilities, but keep their staff. It was a family-owned business anyway. So you just have to make some adjustments and be willing to make those adjustments. And I think the other piece, I guess, economic situation was COVID. So when COVID hit and everything got shut down, the businesses that survived were able to make adjustments. Restaurants that could feed people outside shifted. You saw a big shift to like food trucks, right? Yeah, I'd never seen a food truck really much before COVID, other than out in New York City, something like that. But you start to see people reinvent. So how this goes back to your earlier questions, what you control, your attitude and how you look at the situation of what can I do? I can either freeze and stay in fear and, oh, woe is me. I can try to innovate and figure out a new direction. I can be proactive and, just in case. And I'm one of those people. What happens if I get hit by a bus? And I'm calling John going, what happens if I get hit by a bus? What happens to my company? What happens to my employees? How do I protect for that? That's just how my mind works, because I'm an ops person and I find the fail points. So, but how how you look at those things and how you open yourself up to adaptability. That's how the companies stay in business that go through those recessions. I was just little in the 80s and I guess 80s and 90s. I was coming up as a kid and a teenager, and all the businesses around me, I never saw anybody crumble. I was very lucky. They were still little, they were still family-owned businesses, but they still exist today. So they were able to find ways to ride the storm. And I think that's what it was being able to adapt and using your community. That's the other element I would say. Small businesses need to reach out and build community, just like we have, Tiffany, John, Brian, and I all work together. Now we formed our family with Mike, but we help each other out. And back in the day, the Great Depression, the recessions in the 80s, the community came together and they supported each other. So small business owners need to build community, with adjacency type of companies, or just in, who they know, depending on what you do, right? So somebody's usually the human nature is willing to help somebody because it makes you feel good when you help somebody. So I think those are the things that you can control, and you can, what I have seen and experienced of how people ride the wave.
Some of the things that I've seen, so it's funny because due to my age, my career really started during the Great Recession. So, and that's when I helped all these entrepreneurs start up businesses, like an amusement park. Things that you would think, well, geez, we're in a hard time right now. Nobody's going to want to spend money there. But when you look at the Depression, one of the top selling products during the Great Depression, does anybody know what it is? I love this. It just blows my mind. It's red lipstick, because it was affordable and women felt they could buy this red lipstick. And then in such a bad state of affairs, this little tube of red lipstick is going to make me feel better. And no matter how bad times get, people are still going to buy something that they don't need, but makes them feel good. So what made people feel good during COVID? Food.
Alcohol.
Food and alcohol. But the restaurants who were able to survive knew that, and they pivoted, and we still will forever see that, right? With all the curbside pickups and the deliveries and everybody who got agile with that. So to say, well, I would never start there's only recession proof. First of all, there's no such thing as a recession proof business. That's a spin. That's a nice little spin, but there's no such thing as a recession proof business. And then I've worked for a corporation that really suffered during the Great Recession, and it had nothing to do with the Great Recession. It was all due to poor decisions that they made in the 70s, right? So when you're making decisions for right now, you're not always making the decision for today. You're making the decision for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You have to be able to think strategically. So back to, I think it was Brian's point of, if you're constantly reacting, you will not have longevity. You have to be beyond proactive. You have to be predictive, right? And so when I think back through all my experience, recession played no role in anything, in any of the businesses I helped or worked for. In fact, even retailers were struggling during the Great Recession. Actually, what it did is it highlighted the problems that already existed in certain industries. Retail was already struggling. Their model was already struggling. So when the Great Recession hit, it just made it that much more apparent, like, here's your weak spots. And they weren't quick. Many of them weren't quick to adapt to, we're not just selling product and service anymore. We have to be in the experience business. We're not in the retail business. And still our retailers today are still struggling with I'm not just selling product, because customers are saying, well, if I'm gonna buy product, I'm just gonna go to Amazon, I'm just gonna make it online. Why do I have to go? It's inconvenient. So when retail's not dead, and all of us here know, we've all heard the story, like internet's here, radio's dead. People are buying stuff online, there's not gonna be stores anymore. That's not true. They just have to be agile. And none of what I just said had anything to do with recession, depression, or the economic cycle. That's natural and will continue to happen throughout the course of our lives. Any other comments?
No, I think one of the things you did say about the lipstick, like, so with that Great Depression and then the opening of World War II, I think came right around that as well, because the women went into the labor force. I was reading the article about the red lipstick was a sign of support for the troops, but also empowerment colors. So you and I have had this conversation around colors with marketing, but it is, there are certain times when you'll do something to make yourself feel better, and it'll open up an industry, an opportunity for people. I remember in COVID, I'm not a huge drinker, but I like a good white wine sangria. And Sedona has one that I like. Tap House has one I like. But they were, at that point, you could buy it by like the jug, like a gallon. And my friend Kelly and I were like, this is the greatest thing ever. We can buy this, take it home. And just like didn't have to worry about driving after you drank it. So, but now you can't buy it anymore. It's gone away. You can't, but it was just one of those. That was my one happy memory of COVID. But crying. But it was the adaptability, and you did look for new ways of doing things. I learned how to cook. Of course, my husband would like me to continue to do that, but we had time to explore new opportunities, and you saw DoorDash open up, and that gave its opportunity to flourish. So I think creativity, positivity, and proactiveness are, what you need to keep that in your mind all the time, even when things are going okay. So.
And I always like to go, it's that ingenuity, right? What I'm going to butcher what Henry Ford said, but he said, if people, I could have just made, what was it? If all I was trying to do is get people from point A to point B, I wouldn't necessarily have to build a car, right? I could just have a faster wagon, but it was bigger than just that, right? Driving is even more than just getting from point A to point B. So it's about getting into the psychology of the consumer and knowing what it exactly is that they're buying it. And it's not like, we don't sell based on here are all the values and the benefits. No, how am I going to feel? How is this going to improve my life? And so as a business owner, that's what we have to do all the time. We have to be in our customers or clients' shoes and think about it from their perspective, and think about what they're going to want, not today, but in the future. That's where it gets fun for me. I love doing that.
Yeah, and challenges are like earthquakes break up the sidewalks to allow plants to grow through the cracks, right? So if you keep your mindset to these harder times, or even when it's not a great recession, you're just going through a normal business cycle, and it's a tougher time because things are layering on top of it. You've got a lot. Those challenges generate perseverance. If you can get through, when you come out on the other side, boy, you have a big pat on the back for yourself, and look at how I've grown, and look at what I can do. So that happens on a daily, weekly, monthly basis for us small business owners. But keep your head up.
Any other questions from the group? Did any of this conversation bring up any questions for our guests? No? What are the questions? I'll leave, because we only have about 8 minutes left. I'd like to ask and it can be everybody. It can be the advisors, but it can also be the guests. What are pain points that you are hearing right now? Like, what are the most common, you're hearing a lot of these questions over and over again from your clients or your customers. What seems to be their top pain points right now in your world?
Sure, I'll go first. Two major things. One, still hard to find good people. It's a really tight employment market, so that's an ongoing thing. I'd say it's a little less extreme than it was a year ago, but still really low unemployment, really hard to find good talent out there right now. So that's a pain point. The other is, and John's probably running into this as well on his side of thing, is a person a contractor or are they an employee? That seems to be an issue that a lot of companies are struggling with and trying to make sure that they're paying those people correctly and not about to get themselves set up with lots of fines for having misclassified them. So those are probably the two main things for me. So
That's my opportunity. Thank you, Brian, for teeing that up. If you have not watched the difference between a subcontractor and an employee, you can tune into that course on the Empower People members only site that John Rabil gave last week, John? Something like that, or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah.
yeah, and they're probably an employee. I just want to say that. They might be a contractor, but if they look like an employee, talk like an employee, smell like an employee, they're probably an employee. Yeah, so.
I'll just follow since Brian teed up the employee contractor issue. I hear that one a lot. I hear a lot about contracts. I get a lot of just general questions about I'm doing X. I don't know what I don't know. So, what are my issues? What are my risks? What are the legal considerations I'm not taking in or thinking about? And that's sort of a constant. It's just, I don't know.
And from your standpoint, do you prefer that as an attorney? Because if they're kind of saying, I'm doing this, tell me if I'm doing it right, John. It's like they're asking you questions before they get into trouble.
Yeah, I prefer that my clients ask me questions up front so we can address anything, proactive about it. Like I said, you stay out of a lot of trouble. Not all of it, but a good amount of it.
I'm glad to know you like my emails. Questions.
Yeah, so lately I've been getting what's the difference between policies and procedures. And do I need this policy? Why do I need all these policies? And helping them understand the importance of the documentation is for communication and consistent communication. And it is when you have high turnover, it is important to have operations manuals. Those have all of my clients right now. We're doing documentation work for them, either on their new solutions that they're implementing and how to manage them because of employee turnover, or because they're growing and they want to make sure that they have repeatable. But the policy, it's that time of the year. People have to either refresh or they're building, and documentation takes a lot of dedication and time to get it down, but you're going to have to do it at some point in time. So those are the questions I'm getting, is why do I need to do this? And, what's a policy versus something, process or procedure.
For me, I've already alluded to some of the questions, like I asked John, some of the questions that people are shooting my way in terms of brand and strategy. Usually for most folks, it's, I have a logo. What else do I need? Right. So it's kind of starting like, yeah, that's just a piece of a brand. And I would say the other element is usually with people will say, I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to communicate it. So see, and that's not, due to the current climate we're in right now, that's always ongoing, because communication, if you've ever been in any relationship, can be a challenge, whether it be personal or professional. So a lot of the questions I seem to get seem to be very consistent, and don't change that much. And then I also get, does all this stuff really matter? Like, do I really need to do the social media and the emails? I mean, I'm not getting, I don't see my, all these contracts from all this. And I'm like, no, there's brand awareness. So all this stuff that you're doing is trying to get your brand into an evoked set. And all that means is when somebody thinks of a certain category, a certain service, a certain product, that there's 7 names that will immediately jump into your brain, and you're fighting to be within that top 7. So if you're not doing all that and you're not getting brand awareness, you won't be thought of when the time comes when they need you. So yes, all of that stuff is important. And when you think I can just hire my virtual assistant to take it off my plate, that might not work if they don't really understand what your purpose and your vision is, because the goal isn't just, it's not a task to simply, I did it. That is, what is the message you're trying to get out there, and what do you want people to know about you? So just that's where I'll leave that. But I wanted to thank everybody today for participating in the Empower Hour. It was fantastic. Tomorrow, like I said, we have our course with Brian Kinzie, the Sexy Employee Handbook. I should have named it that, Brian. That's what we should have named the course. I went about it wrong. They say sex sells, and I missed out.
We don't use sexy in an employee handbook situation. So-
But it would get people to attend. And then you could start the course. This is what you don't do.
Even the
and
lawyer
so,
said no.
That's what happens. You get a good idea. No, okay. So then every week this month, we actually have a course. So following that, we have the superheroes journey. Next week was Susanna Kelver. And then the week after that, we have Stacie Briley Goodman with Business Processes 101. And then the last week of March, we have Practicing DEI Externally, obviously outside of your organization, with Dr. Christine Fusilier. So I do send a lot of emails, but I want to make sure everybody gets all the information and can sign up an RSVP. But in the meantime, if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you, everybody, for participating. And I'll leave you with our tagline and our slogan. Let's evolve together. Have a good one.